The story spread like fire through dry grass. It traveled from ship to ship, planet to planet, sector to sector. Within days, everyone in the galaxy had heard about the 4 humans who had destroyed a Krell warship from the inside. At first, no one believed it. The Krell were too powerful. Humans were too weak. It had to be a lie, a story made up to scare people. But then the evidence started coming in. A trading ship found the broken Krell warship drifting in space. Its engines were dead. Its communications were destroyed. Half of its soldiers had died when the life support failed. The survivors were rescued by other Krell ships, but they were no longer the proud warriors they had been. They were broken, terrified creatures who could not stop talking about the smiling humans. The video recordings from the ship were found and shared across the galaxy. People watched in amazement as 4 small humans moved through the dark corridors like ghosts. They watched Jiho fight warriors twice his size and win. They watched Dohan destroy machines with his bare hands. They watched Hana navigate through chaos without fear. And they watched Yuna smile as she led her crew to freedom. That smile became famous. People made pictures of it. They shared it on their networks. The smile of death, some called it. Others simply called it the human grin. On Earth, Yuna and her crew became heroes. They were given medals and honors. Important people wanted to meet them. News programs wanted to interview them. But the 4 of them did not care about fame. They cared about something else. There were other prisoners on that ship, Yuna told the crowds. Other species. Other people who needed help. We escaped, but they did not. We cannot forget them. Her words touched hearts across the galaxy. For the first time, different species came together against the Krell. A fleet was formed. Ships from a dozen different worlds. They flew to the outer rim, not to fight, but to rescue. The Krell commander watched from his damaged ship as the rescue fleet arrived. He could do nothing. His ship was still broken. His soldiers were still afraid. All he could do was watch as the prisoners he had planned to sell were taken to freedom. "This is not over," he growled. "The Krell Empire does not forget. We will have our revenge." But his words were empty. Something had changed in the galaxy. The Krell were no longer seen as unbeatable. They were just another bully who could be defeated if people were brave enough to try. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Talo finished his story. The young delegates sat in shocked silence. They had not moved for hours. They had barely breathed. And that, Talo said, is why we have the first rule. If a human grins run, a young delegate raised a trembling hand. What happened to Captain Yuna and her crew? Talo smiled, a real smile full of warmth. They went back to their simple life. They still fly the Morning Star, delivering medicine to colonies that need it. They do not think of themselves as heroes. They think of themselves as ordinary people who did what needed to be done. And the Krell? Did they get their revenge? Talo shook his head slowly. The Krell commander tried. He rebuilt his ship. He gathered his soldiers. He hunted for the Morning Star across the galaxy. But he never found them. The old ambassador leaned back in his chair. Some say he went mad, chasing shadows and dreams. Some say he saw human smiles everywhere he looked, even in places where there were no humans. The fear ate him from the inside until there was nothing left but an empty shell. He stood up, his old bones cracking with the effort. That is the true power of humans. It is not their strength. It is not their weapons. It is their will. Once a human decides to win, nothing can stop them. Not size, not numbers, not even fear. Talo walked slowly toward the exit of the Great Hall. But before he left, he turned back one more time. Remember this lesson, young ones. When you meet humans, treat them with respect. Work with them, and they will be the best friends you have ever had. They will die for you. They will fight for you. They will move stars for you. His 4 eyes became very serious. But if you become their enemy? If you threaten their people? If you take what is theirs? He paused at the doorway, his old body framed by the light from the corridor beyond. Then may the gods of your world have mercy on you, because the humans will not. He left, and the doors closed behind him. In the hall, the young delegates looked at each other. The room was very quiet. Some of them were already changing their plans. They had come to the Galactic Council thinking humans were weak creatures to be ignored. Now they knew better. One delegate, a small being with blue skin and large eyes, spoke softly. I think we should send gifts to the humans. Many gifts. And perhaps an invitation to a peace meeting. The others nodded quickly. Very quickly, far away, on a small cargo ship flying through the stars. Captain Yuna sneezed. Someone is talking about you, Hana said with a laugh. Yuna smiled and looked out at the endless space before them. Another delivery, another colony that needed medicine. Life had returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after everything that had happened. Let them talk, she said. We have work to do. Dohan was fixing something in the engine room, humming an old song from Earth. Jiho was in the corner, exercising as always. Hana was at her navigation station, plotting their course through the stars. Just 4 ordinary humans on an ordinary ship. Doing ordinary things, but across the galaxy. Their story was being told again and again. Parents told it to their children at bedtime. Teachers taught it in schools. Soldiers whispered it before battles to give themselves courage. The story of the 4 humans who smiled in the face of death and won. The story that taught the galaxy the first rule of survival. If a human grins, run, because that grin means they have already figured out how to beat you. That grin means they know something you do not know. That grin is the last thing many enemies have seen before their worlds came crashing down. And somewhere in the endless darkness between stars, a small cargo ship carried on. Its crew was laughing about something, their voices warm and happy. They were just humans. That was enough. The galaxy had learned to be very, very careful about those words. Just humans. As if such a thing were ever. Simple. As if such creatures could ever be weak. As if the beings who had crawled out of the mud and reached for the stars could ever be anything less than extraordinary. The first rule existed because the galaxy had learned the truth. Humans were not to be underestimated. Not today. Not ever. And anyone who forgot that rule? Well, they would simply have to learn it again, the hard way. The Morning Star was a small ship. It was not beautiful. It was not fast. The paint on its sides was old and peeling. The engines made strange sounds when they started. But Captain Yuna loved it anyway. It was her home. She sat in the captain's chair and looked out at the stars. They were in a quiet part of space, far from the busy trade routes. The colony they were going to was 3 days away. Everything was peaceful. Captain, I made food, said Hana, walking onto the bridge with a tray. Hana was the youngest of the crew. She was only 22 years old, but she was the best navigator Yuna had ever seen. She could find her way through any asteroid field, any nebula, any storm. She could also cook very well, which was important on long trips. Thank you, Yuna said, taking a bowl from the tray. It was rice with vegetables. Simple food, but it tasted like home. Duhan came in next. He was tall and quiet, with hands that could fix any machine. He had worked on ships since he was a boy. There was no engine he could not repair, no system he could not understand. He sat down at his station and started checking the ship's systems, as he did every hour. Everything looks good, he said. The engines are stable. Life support is normal. We should reach the colony on schedule. The last member of the crew was Jiho. He was sitting in the corner, doing exercises with a small weight. Jiho was not an engineer or a navigator. He was security. Before joining the Morning Star, he had been a soldier. He did not talk about those days very much. But sometimes, when he thought no one was looking, his eyes would become distant and sad. "Jiho, come eat," Hana said. He put down the weight and walked over. As he moved, Yuna noticed how he checked every corner of the room. Old habits never died, she thought. Once a soldier, always a soldier. They ate together in comfortable silence. This was how most of their meals went. They had been a crew for 2 years now. They knew each other well enough that they did not need to fill every moment with words. Then the alarm started screaming. Doan's hands flew across his console. His face went pale. "Captain, we have contacts." Multiple contacts. They came out of nowhere. Yuna jumped to her feet and looked at the screen. 5 ships were surrounding them. They were big and dark, covered in weapons. She recognized the design immediately. Her blood went cold. "Krell," she whispered. The Krell were raiders, pirates, slavers. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not need. Their empire controlled a large part of the Outer Rim, and they were always looking for new victims. "Can we run?" Hannah asked, already moving to her navigation station. Doan shook his head. "They are too fast, and they have us surrounded. If we try to escape, they will destroy us." Jiho walked calmly to the weapons station. The Morning Star had only 2 small guns. They were meant for asteroids, not warships. Against 5 Krell raiders, they were useless. "We cannot fight," Jiho said quietly. "We cannot run. That leaves one option." Yuna knew he was right. She felt sick to her stomach, but she knew. "We surrender." A message came through on the communication system. The voice was harsh and cruel. "Human ship. You will turn off your engines and prepare to be taken. If you resist, you will die. If you cooperate, you might live. Choose now." Yuna pressed the button to respond. "This is Captain Yuna of the Morning Star. We surrender. Please do not hurt my crew." The Krell laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Good choice, little human. Good choice." The next hour was the worst of Yuna's life. The Krell soldiers came aboard their ship. They were huge, almost 3 meters tall. Their skin was like black rock, and their eyes glowed red. They had 4 arms, each one ending in sharp claws that could cut through metal. The soldiers pushed the humans around like they were toys. They took their weapons. They took their tools. They took everything valuable on the ship. Then they put heavy chains on the crew's hands and dragged them across to the biggest Krell ship. The inside of the Krell ship was dark and hot. The walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to move in the shadows. The air smelled like blood and fear. Yuna had heard stories about what happened to prisoners on Krell ships. She tried not to think about them. They were brought to a large room. At the far end, on a chair made of bones, sat the Krell commander. He was even bigger than his soldiers. His black skin had lines of gold running through it, a sign of high rank. His red eyes looked at the humans like they were insects. 4 humans, the commander said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. 4 soft, weak, pathetic humans. And they think they can travel through my space. He stood up and walked toward them. Each step made the floor shake. He stopped in front of Yuna and bent down until his face was very close to hers. "Do you know what we do with prisoners, little human?" Yuna did not answer. She was afraid, but she did not want to show it. The commander laughed. "We sell them. Humans are worth a lot in the slave markets. You are exotic, rare. Some collectors will pay much for creatures like you." He looked at each member of the crew. The young female can work. The tall one can fix things. The soldier can fight in the pits. And you, Captain? He grabbed Yuna's chin with his clawed hand. You have fire in your eyes. Some master will enjoy breaking that fire. Jiho moved forward, his chains rattling. 2 guards grabbed him and threw him to the floor. He did not make a sound. Take them to the cells, the commander ordered. Let them think about their future. We reached the slave market in 5 days. The guards dragged them through long, dark hallways. The cells were at the bottom of the ship. They were small and dirty, with walls that were always wet, with something that smelled terrible. The 4 humans were thrown into one cell together. The door closed with a loud bang. The guards walked away, their laughter echoing in the hallway. For a long moment, no one spoke. Hannah was crying quietly. Dohon was sitting against the wall with his head in his hands. Jiho was checking his body for injuries. Then Yuna did something unexpected. She smiled. It was not a happy smile. It did not reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile that Tao had warned the young delegates about. The kind of smile that came before something terrible. Captain, Hannah said, confused. Why are you smiling? Yuna looked at her crew. Because they made a mistake. A big mistake. Dawn raised his head. What mistake? They searched us. They took our weapons. They took our tools. But they did not take everything. She reached into her boot and pulled out a small metal object. It was barely bigger than her thumb. They missed this. Jiho's eyes went wide. Is that what I think it is? A frequency disruptor, Yuna said. It can open any electronic lock. It can disable any alarm. It can turn their own systems against them. Dahan started to smile too. His was the smile of an engineer who saw a puzzle he could solve. If we can get to their engine room, I can do a lot of damage. Hannah wiped her tears. I memorized the layout of the ship when they brought us here. I know where everything is. Jiho cracked his knuckles. The sound was loud in the small cell. Just point me at their soldiers. I will handle the rest. They were 4 humans. They were chained in a cell at the bottom of an enemy ship. They were surrounded by hundreds of warriors who could tear them apart with their bare hands. And they were all smiling now. The guards walking past their cell saw those smiles and felt something strange. A cold feeling in their stomachs. A whisper in their minds that said something was wrong. But they ignored it. After all, what could 4 weak humans do? They would find out soon enough. The Krell ship was screaming. Alarms echoed through every corridor. Red lights flashed in the darkness. Soldiers who had been sleeping moments ago were now running through the hallways, shouting orders that no one could hear over the noise in the engine room. Dohan worked with calm hands. Around him, sparks flew from broken machines. Fires burned in corners where he had cut important wires. The main power core was making a terrible sound, like a dying animal crying for help. How much time? Jiho asked. He stood at the door, watching the corridor. His hands were covered in black blood. 2 Krell guards lay at his feet. They had tried to stop him. They had failed. 2 more minutes, Dohan said. I want to make sure this cannot be fixed. Not today. Not ever. He reached deep into a machine and pulled out a handful of wires. The lights in the engine room went dark. Now only the emergency power was working. The ship was dying. Done, Dohan said. Let us go. They ran through corridors that were now almost completely dark. The emergency lights gave just enough glow to see by. Krell soldiers ran past them, too confused to notice 2 small humans moving in the shadows. The ship was in chaos. Without main power, doors would not open. Elevators did not work. The systems that controlled air and water and heat were failing. In their panic, The Krell did not know what to do first. Jiho led the way through the darkness. He had been in situations like this before. Confusion was a weapon, and right now, it was the sharpest weapon they had. They turned a corner and ran into 3 Krell soldiers. The soldiers raised their weapons, their red eyes glowing in the dark. Jiho did not stop running. He did not slow down. He jumped at the first soldier with a speed that should have been impossible for a human. His fist hit the soldier's throat. The Krell dropped, unable to breathe. The second soldier swung at him with clawed hands. Jiho ducked under the attack and kicked the soldier's knee. The joint bent the wrong way with a horrible cracking sound. The soldier fell screaming. The third soldier was smarter. He stepped back, trying to get distance so he could use his weapon. But Dohan was already behind him. The engineer swung a heavy pipe he had taken from the engine room. It hit the soldier's head with a sound like a bell ringing. "Clear," Jiho said. They kept running. On the other side of the ship, Yuna and Hana were having their own adventure. They had reached the shuttle bay, but it was not empty. 10 Krell soldiers stood guard around the shuttles, weapons ready. "Too many," Hana whispered. "We cannot fight 10. Yuna looked around the bay. Her eyes stopped on a control panel near the door. A smile spread across her face. "We do not need to fight them. We just need to move them." She showed Hana the disruptor. "This can do more than open locks. It can also create false signals. Watch." She pointed the disruptor at the control panel and pressed a button. Across the bay, a door opened. An alarm started sounding from that direction. A recording of Yuna's voice, captured from the ship systems, played through the speakers. "All units, prisoners escaping through Section 7. All units respond." The Krell soldiers looked at each other. Then they ran toward the false alarm, leaving only 2 guards behind. "2 we can handle," Yuna said. She and Hana moved fast. The first guard did not even see Hana coming. She jumped on his back and wrapped her arms around his neck. He tried to shake her off, but she held on tight. After a few seconds, he fell unconscious. Yuna faced the second guard. He was big, even for a Krell. His claws were longer than her fingers. He laughed when he saw her. "Little human thinks she can fight me?" Yuna did not answer. She just smiled. The guard swung at her. She stepped to the side. He swung again. She ducked. He was strong, but she was fast. Every attack missed by inches. The guard was getting angry now. His swings became wild, uncontrolled. That was exactly what Yuna wanted. On his next attack, she did not dodge. Instead, she stepped inside his reach, too close for his claws to hurt her. She grabbed his arm and twisted. Using his own weight against him, she threw him over her shoulder. The guard hit the floor hard. Before he could get up, Yuna was on him. She pressed her thumb against a point on his neck. His eyes rolled back, and he stopped moving. "Where did you learn that?" Hana asked, amazed. "Earth has many ways to fight," Yuna said. "Size does not always win." They heard footsteps behind them. Yuna spun around, ready to fight again. But it was Doan and Jiho, coming through a side door. "The engines are finished," Doan reported. "This ship is not going anywhere for a long time." "Good. Everyone into the shuttle." They climbed into the nearest shuttle. It was a Krell design, meant for their large bodies. The humans looked small inside it. But Hana quickly found the controls. "I can fly this," she said. "It is similar to ours." The shuttle's engines came to life. Yuna looked out the window at the chaos they had created. Fires were burning in different parts of the ship. Krell soldiers were running everywhere, trying to fix problems that could not be fixed. The great warship that had captured them was now helpless. "Open the bay doors," Yuna ordered. Hana pressed a button. The doors did not move. "They have locked them from the control room," she said. Duhan looked at the shuttle's weapons. This has guns. Krell shuttles always have guns. Yuna nodded. Then we make our own door. Jiho took the weapons controls. He aimed at the bay doors and fired. Once, twice, 3 times. The metal glowed red, then orange, then white. Finally, it exploded outward into space. Air rushed out of the bay. Loose equipment flew everywhere. Warning sirens added to the noise already filling the ship, but the shuttle was already moving. Hannah flew them through the hole in the doors, out into the black emptiness of space. Behind them, the Krell ship sat dark and broken. Its weapons tried to aim at the escaping shuttle, but without main power, they were too slow. The shuttle was already out of range. In the control room of the Krell ship, the commander watched the shuttle escape. His red eyes burned with rage. His claws dug into the arms of his bone chair until they broke. How? He screamed. They were prisoners. They were weak. They were nothing. A soldier came running in, his face filled with fear. Commander, the damage is too great. We have no communications. We have no engines. Life support will fail in 6 hours. The commander threw him across the room. I do not care about the ship. I want those humans. I want them found. I want them dead. But there was nothing he could do. His ship was dying. His soldiers were in chaos. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, 4 humans were flying to freedom. In the shuttle. The crew was silent. They watched the broken Krell ship grow smaller and smaller behind them. Then, Hannah started to laugh. It was a small laugh at first, but it grew. Soon they were all laughing. Laughing at the impossible thing they had done. Laughing at the fear they had felt and overcome. Laughing because they were alive. We did it, Dawn said, still not quite believing it. We actually did it. Never doubt humans, Yuna said, leaning back in her seat. Never doubt what we can do when we have no choice but to win. Jiho looked at his captain. What now? Yuna thought for a moment. Then she smiled. Now we go home. And we tell everyone what the Krell do to innocent people. We tell everyone about the prisoners still on that ship. We tell everyone that the Krell are not as strong as they think. The shuttle flew on through the stars, carrying 4 tired but unbroken humans toward a future they had earned with blood, sweat, and dangerous smiles. Behind them, an empire was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from 100 different worlds. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some floated in tanks of liquid because they could not breathe air. The hall was so large that clouds sometimes formed near the ceiling. Today, the clouds were dark, as if they knew something important was about to happen. Ambassador Talo stood at the center of the speaking platform. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His gray skin was wrinkled like dried fruit, and his 4 eyes had seen many things in his 300 years of life. He had watched empires rise and fall. He had survived 2 galactic wars. But when he spoke about humans, his voice shook like a leaf in the wind. Welcome, young delegates, he said. His voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the massive hall. You have come here because your species has finally reached the stars. You have built ships. You have found other life. You think you understand the galaxy now. He paused and looked around the room. The new delegates sat in their seats with proud faces. They had worked so hard to get here. Their scientists had solved the mysteries of space travel. Their engineers had built magnificent vessels. They believed they were ready for anything. Talo remembered when he had felt the same way. That was before he met his first human. There is much you must learn, he continued. There are rules in this galaxy. Rules that will keep you alive. Rules that have been written in blood and tears over millions of years. A young delegate from the mock species raised one of his 6 arms. Respected Ambassador, we have studied the archives. We know about the dangerous regions of space. We know which species are hostile. What more is there to learn? Talo smiled, but there was no happiness in it. You have studied the archives, yes. But the archives do not tell you everything. They cannot prepare you for the most dangerous thing in this galaxy. The delegates looked at each other with confusion. What could be more dangerous than the black holes that swallowed ships whole? What could be worse than the silicon monsters that ate metal? What threat had they missed? I speak of humans, Talo said. Laughter filled the hall. The delegates could not help themselves. Humans? Those small, soft creatures from the blue planet called Earth. They had no claws. They had no armor. They could not survive in the cold of space or the heat of a star. They were so fragile that a simple fall could break their bones. One delegate, a tall being covered in sharp spines, spoke up. Ambassador, surely you joke. We have seen humans. They are weak. They are small. They do not even have natural weapons. How can they be dangerous? Talo did not laugh. His old face became very serious. That is exactly what the Krell thought. The Krell had the strongest army in the Outer Rim. They had ships made of the hardest metal. They had warriors who trained from birth to kill. And now? He let the question hang in the air. Now the Krell are a broken people, he finally said. Their empire is dust. Their warriors are scattered. And it all began because they captured 4 humans and expected them to be afraid. The laughter stopped. The delegates leaned forward in their seats. Even those who had been talking quietly among themselves were now paying attention. Let me tell you about humans, Talo said, walking slowly across the platform. They come from a world that tried to kill them every day. Their planet has earthquakes and floods and fires. It has animals with poison and teeth and claws. The air itself carries diseases. And yet humans did not just survive. They conquered. They became the masters of their world. He stopped and looked directly at the young delegates. Do you know what that means? It means humans are not like us. When we face danger, we run. We hide. We wait for safety. But humans? Humans run toward danger. They see a mountain and they climb it. They see an ocean and they cross it. They see a beast and they hunt it. A small delegate with large eyes raised a trembling hand. But they smile. We have seen recordings. They smile all the time. That means they are friendly, yes? Talo closed his 4 eyes and shook his head slowly. This is the most important lesson I will ever teach you. Listen carefully, for your lives may depend on it. He opened his eyes and his voice became hard as stone. In most species, a smile means happiness. It means peace. It means, I am your friend. But in humans, a smile can mean something very different. The hall was completely silent now. Even the floating delegates had stopped moving in their tanks. When a human smiles because they are happy, their whole face changes. Their eyes become bright. Their body relaxes. This kind of smile is safe. You can trust this smile. Talo walked to the edge of the platform and looked down at the young faces staring up at him. But there's another smile. A smile that does not reach the eyes. A smile that comes just before violence. A smile that says, I know something you do not know. This is the smile of a predator who has already won. He raised his old, wrinkled hand and pointed at the delegates. If you ever see this smile on a human face, you have only one choice. Run. Run as fast as you can. Do not fight. Do not negotiate. Do not try to understand. Just run. The delegate with spines laughed nervously. Surely you exaggerate, Ambassador. No species is that dangerous. Talo looked at him with pity in his 4 eyes. The crow said the same thing. Let me tell you what happened to them. Let me tell you what happened to them. Let me tell you about Captain Yuna and her crew of 3. Let me tell you how 4 humans destroyed an empire. He sat down on a speaking chair, a seat reserved for only the most important stories. The lights in the hall dimmed automatically. This was the signal that a tale of great importance was about to begin. It started on a small cargo ship called the Morning Star, Talo said. The ship was carrying medicine to a colony on the edge of known space. The crew was small, just 4 humans. They were not soldiers. They were not warriors. They were just ordinary people doing an ordinary job. He leaned forward, and every being in the hall leaned forward with him. And then the Krell found them. The old ambassador's voice dropped to almost a whisper. What happened next changed the galaxy forever. And it all began with a single smile. The delegates waited breathless as Talo began to tell the story of Captain Yuna and her crew. None of them knew that this story would save many of their lives in the years to come. None of them knew that they would one day pass this warning to their own children. The first rule of galactic survival was simple. If a human grins run, they were about to learn why. The cell was dark and cold. Water dripped from somewhere above, making small splashing sounds that echoed off the metal walls. The smell was bad, a mix of rust and things that had died long ago. But the 4 humans inside did not care about any of that. They were too busy planning why Yun held the small disruptor in her palm. It was their only tool, their only weapon, their only hope. In the hands of anyone else, it would have been useless. But Yuna was not anyone else. She had grown up on Earth's roughest streets. She had learned to survive with nothing. This tiny device was more than enough. Here is what I know, Hana said quietly. She had closed her eyes, remembering every turn, every door, every corridor they had passed through. The engine room is 4 levels up and at the back of the ship. The control room is at the top. There are guards everywhere, but they change shifts every 6 hours. How many guards? Jiho asked. I counted about 30 on the way here. But a ship this size probably has 200 soldiers or more. Dawan let out a low whistle. 200 against 4. Those are bad numbers. Numbers do not matter, Yuna said. What matters is surprise. They think we are helpless. They think we are scared. They think we will sit here and wait to be sold like animals. She smiled again, that dangerous smile. We are going to show them how wrong they are. Jiho moved closer. What is the plan, Captain? Yuna began to draw on the dirty floor with her finger. The disruptor can open our chains and our cell door. That is the easy part. The hard part is what comes next. She drew a rough map of the ship based on what Hana had told her. We need to do 3 things. First, we need to cut off their communications. If they call for help, we are finished. Second, we need to damage their engines so they cannot chase us. Third, we need to steal a shuttle and escape. Simple, Dohon said with a small laugh. Just 3 impossible things. Not impossible, Yuna replied. Difficult, yes, but not impossible. Humans have done harder things. She pointed to different parts of her rough map. Hana, you will guide us. You have the map in your head. Without you, we will get lost. Hana nodded. Her tears were gone now. Her face was calm and focused. Doan, your job is the engines. I need you to break them badly. Not just a small problem they can fix. I need them dead. Doan thought for a moment. If I can reach the main power core, I can cause an overload. It will not explode the ship, but it will shut down everything for at least an hour. Maybe longer. Good. That is perfect. Yuna turned to Jiho. And you. Your job is to protect us. There will be guards. There will be fighting. Can you handle that without weapons? Jiho held up his hands. They were covered in scars from years of training in combat. These are my weapons. They are all I need. Yuna felt a wave of pride looking at her crew. They were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were just ordinary people who delivered medicine to colonies. But right now, in this dark cell, they were the most dangerous beings on this ship. When do we move? Hannah asked out why Yuna listened. Outside the cell, she could hear the guards talking. Their voices were relaxed. They were not worried. They had done this many times before. They had captured many prisoners. We wait for the shift change, Yuna said. The new guards will not be paying attention. They will be tired and bored. That is when we strike. The hours passed slowly. The humans rested, saving their strength. They did not talk. They did not need to. Each of them was preparing in their own way. Hana went over the map in her mind again and again. She imagined every corridor, every door, every turn. She would not make a mistake. She could not afford to. Dolan thought about the Krell engines. He had seen engines from many species. They all worked on the same basic ideas. Power in, power out. Find the right place to cut, and even the biggest machine would fall. Jiho stretched his muscles and remembered his training. He had fought in wars that most people did not know about. He had faced enemies that would give normal people nightmares. A few Krell guards were nothing. They were big and strong, yes. But they were slow. They were confident. And confident enemies made mistakes. Yuna thought about everything that could go wrong. There were so many things. They could be caught before they left the cell. The disruptor could fail. They could get lost in the ship. They could run into too many guards. 100 things could go wrong, but a few things could also go right. Finally, she heard what she was waiting for. Footsteps outside. Voices talking. The guards were changing. Now, she whispered. She pressed the disruptor against her chains. There was a soft click, and the chains fell open. She did the same for the others. In seconds, they were all free. Yuna moved to the cell door and pressed the disruptor against the lock. The door slid open without a sound. She looked out into the corridor. It was empty. Stay close, she said. Move fast. Be quiet. They moved like shadows through the dark ship. Hana led the way, pointing left and right, up and down. She never hesitated. The map in her head was perfect. They passed sleeping quarters where Krell soldiers snored loudly. They passed storage rooms filled with stolen goods from 100 different raids. They passed a room where prisoners from other species sat in cages, their eyes empty and hopeless. Yuna wanted to help them. But she knew she could not. Not yet. First, she had to complete the mission. First, she had to survive. They reached a junction where two corridors met. Hannah held up her hand, signaling them to stop. She pointed left. Communications room, she whispered. Engine room is straight ahead. Shuttle bay is to the right. Yuna nodded. Dohan, you go to the engines. Jiho, go with him. Protect him while he works. What about you and Hana? Jiho asked. We will handle communications. Yuna's smile was sharp as a knife. Meet at the shuttle bay in 20 minutes. If we are not there, leave without us. Captain, Jiho started to protest. That is an order. Yuna's voice left no room for argument. The mission is more important than any one of us. Get the ship. Get free. Tell the galaxy what happened here. Jiho wanted to argue more, but he knew Yuna was right. He gave her a short nod and disappeared into the darkness with Dohan. Yuna and Hannah continued to the communications room. The door was guarded by one Krell soldier. He was leaning against the wall, half asleep. He did not see the two small humans approaching from the shadows. Yuna picked up a piece of broken metal from the floor. It was not much, but it was enough. She moved fast and silent. Before the guard knew what was happening, she was behind him. One quick strike to the back of his head, and he fell. In, she whispered to Hannah. The communications room was full of screens and machines. Hannah looked at them and smiled. This is easy. Same technology as our ship, just bigger. Give me 2 minutes. She started working, her fingers flying across the controls. One by one, the screens went dark. Warning lights started to blink. And then, everything went silent. Done, Hannah said. They cannot call for help now. All outgoing signals are blocked. At the same moment, far below in the ship, the lights flickered. Dohan had reached the engines. The plan was working. Then the alarms started screaming. Someone had found the fallen guard. Someone had noticed the engine problems. The whole ship was waking up. Run, Una said. They ran toward the shuttle bay. Behind them, they could hear shouting. Footsteps. The Krell were coming. Una smiled as she ran. The hunt was on. And the humans were no longer the prey.